The Indiana Fever just locked in their final 2026 roster, and Caitlin Clark fans are losing their minds right now, and honestly, they have every right to be. The front office had a chance to fix the one glaring problem that showed up in all 3 preseason games, a lack of floor spacing from the forward spots, and instead they handed the last roster spot to another guard. Meanwhile, Justine Pissott, a 6'4" sharpshooter with a 7-foot wingspan who was literally built for this team, is now reportedly injured, relegated to a development contract in order to make space for another small guard that will end up riding the bench anyway. Is the Indiana Fever front office really serious about winning a championship? Let me know down in the comments below.
Yeah, yikes. That's all I gotta say. Caitlin Clark fans showing no mercy whatsoever, right? Fans are going to feel the way they want to feel, and that's what they deserve to feel. Right? Sports fans are vocal. Sports fans are loud. And I swear to God, there is a fraction, I guess it's the old WNBA fans, that are completely clueless on actual sports.
3 preseason games exposed everything an opposing coach needs to know on how to beat the Indiana Fever this year. Every single opponent figured out the same thing almost immediately and just kept doing it over and over, and Indiana had no answer. The New York Liberty, the Dallas Wings, the Nigerian national team, all 3 ran basically the same defense. They collapsed the paint, left Indiana's forwards wide open on the perimeter, and just dared those forwards to beat them from the outside. And here's why that worked so easily. Aaliyah Boston, Maisha Hines-Allen, Monique Billings, Michaela Timpson, and Damiris Dantas are all traditional bigs who don't shoot threes. Not a single one of them makes a defender nervous standing on the three-point line, so defenders don't even have to think about closing out on them. They just stay home in the paint and wait.
In which the Indiana Fever, preseason or not, got absolutely crushed by what we believe is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. But I gotta tell you, when it was starters versus starters, it didn't turn out so well. It did not turn out so well. And many fans today are screaming from the top of the mountain what they've been saying since the draft. We got absolutely destroyed on the boards last night. Destroyed.
When that happens, the whole offense breaks down fast. Clark drives and runs into a wall of bodies because there's no space to attack. Boston catches the ball in the post and immediately gets doubled because the Liberty, for example, knew that nobody on the perimeter was going to punish them for leaving their matchup. Against the Liberty, that's exactly what kept happening. Boston getting the ball, 2 defenders already there, and nowhere to go. The Wings game had a different kind of ugly to it. Dallas dominated the glass by 19 rebounds, and part of that is directly connected to the spacing problem, because when none of your forwards are pulling defenders out to the perimeter, everyone ends up crammed in the same 10-foot area around the basket. So when a shot goes up, Indiana's bigs are already fighting through a crowd that shouldn't be that crowded. Coach Stephanie White didn't sugarcoat it after the game either, saying the Fever got out toughed and that Dallas just had a different level of urgency. Indiana also turned the ball over 17 times in that game, which Dallas converted into 42 free throw attempts. That's not a hustle problem, that's a structural one.
You have to have somebody at that 4 and 5 that is stretching the floor. All right, that's why I say all that. You have to have somebody at that 4 and 5 to stretch that floor, because the WNBA is literally turning into the NBA. It literally is, man. It's just too much talent to have bigs on the floor together that can't shoot. It's too much talent for that. The defense can just clog that paint, as we saw last night, as we saw last year. You know, it's going to continue to happen.
The Nigeria game, though, gave a glimpse of something. Damiris Dantas went 4 for 6 from 3, and the second defenders had to respect her range. Driving lanes opened up that were completely closed in the other 2 games. One forward shooting from outside literally changed the geometry of the offense, and that's not an accident. So this isn't a spacing problem you can scheme your way out of with better play design. Play design only works if you have the right players to run it. Indiana doesn't have a forward who can shoot threes on a guaranteed contract right now, and that's a roster construction problem, which means it follows you into every single game no matter what plays you draw up.
Tall enough to go up against some of these better teams? The answer that I see, and I've been saying this all offseason, we need more. We need more size. We need an adequate backup to AB. We need a starting caliber power forward. And the Indiana Fever and the Indiana Fever media, they're running cover for this Justine Pissott injury. Justine Pissott comes out and says, don't believe everything the media says.
The final roster dropped, and the first thing fans noticed was the guard count. 7 guards on a 12-person roster, and the front court spacing problem that showed up in all 3 preseason games just sat there, completely untouched.
Our opening night roster is set. This just dropped. Kelsey Mitchell, Hines Allen, Raven Johnson, Aaliyah Boston, Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, Demarius Dantas, Justine Pissott, Michaela Timpson, Caitlin Clark, Monique Billings, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, and Ty Harris. That is your opening night 2026 roster. Right there. Championship season. With the length on this team, we shall see.
Coach Stephanie White has been pretty open about wanting Clark to play more off the ball, and she's even talked about sliding Clark into a small forward role at times. White's stated goal is to get Clark into the second or third action of a possession, rather than having her initiate everything herself, which sounds creative on paper but causes a real problem in practice. Clark's entire game runs on pace. She pushes in transition before defenses can set. She creates off movement as a ball handler, and she punishes teams who aren't ready for her yet. Asking her to wait for the second or third action of a possession is asking her to operate in exactly the spots where defenses are already organized and waiting. Clark pushed back and she didn't hedge. "I'm the best transition player in the league," she said, and she's not wrong.
I think mostly on dead balls, like I'm the best. I think I'm the best transition player in the league. That's where I thrive. Everybody knows that's my game. So, getting the ball off of rebound or in transition, like that's probably when I'm going to be the primary ball handler more than anything. And then,
She did acknowledge the off-ball concept, actually comparing it to how the Golden State Warriors use Steph Curry, where moving without the ball forces defenders to track you everywhere. But notice how she framed it. As a weapon you add, not a role you replace everything else with. White seems to want it as the foundation. Clark wants it as one tool in a much bigger kit. And honestly, off-ball Clark can work, because her shooting is real and defenses do have to chase her off screens. The catch is that off-ball Clark only functions if the other players on the floor can actually threaten defenses enough to create the movement she needs. Right now, Indiana's forwards can't do that, so you'd be running an off-ball system without the spacing to make it breathe.
I swear to God, if y'all keep Demarius Dantas and cut Justine Pissott, y'all are so damn incompetent. Woo! Fire the Fever front office and Stephanie White. It is going down. That was painful to watch. I hope Cece was not re-injured. And you want to sell tickets? Nobody wants to watch Stephanie White's show.
So what you actually have is Clark wanting to run, White wanting her to operate in set actions, and a roster that can't cleanly execute either version because the floor never opens up the way it needs to. 7 guards means Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexi Hull are all on the floor needing the ball in their hands at different moments, and someone is always going to be standing somewhere that doesn't make sense for them. That logjam doesn't get solved by better rotations or smarter substitutions. It's baked into the roster. And the part that makes fans genuinely angry isn't the philosophy debate between Clark and White. It's that Indiana used the last roster spot on a 5-foot 8-inch guard who doesn't fill any gap that wasn't already filled, while a 6-foot 4-inch shooter with a 7-foot wingspan who could have fixed the spacing problem entirely ended up on a development contract.
Like, I don't think people understand. 6'4" snipers don't grow on trees.
Justine Pissott went 25th overall in the draft, and Indiana picked her because she's a 6'4" forward who shot 42.2% from 3 at Vanderbilt on 6.6 attempts per game, which ranked 7th in all of women's college basketball that year. That's not a player who occasionally steps out to the perimeter. That's a player who lives there, and scouts coming out of the draft called her jump shot one of the purest in the entire class. On top of that, she's got a 7-foot wingspan, which means she can shoot over smaller defenders who try to contest her and switch onto guards on defense without giving up a size mismatch. At Vanderbilt, she wasn't just spotting up in the corner either. She moved, she defended multiple positions because of her length, and college defenses genuinely couldn't ignore her on the perimeter, which is exactly what Indiana's been missing at the 4 spot. When a forward commands that kind of defensive attention from outside the arc, the paint opens. Boston gets her post catches without a second defender already waiting. Clark gets downhill lanes that aren't clogged before she even gets there.
Justine Pissott is huge. Like, if you've been looking at any of the drills, Justine Pissott is huge.
The Liberty preseason game showed all of this in real time. Pissott played 10 minutes, scored 8 points, and hit 2 of her 3 3-point attempts against a team with real length and real defensive players. Aaliyah Boston noticed it immediately after the game, saying that having a post player who can shoot changes the geometry of the whole offense because defenses suddenly have to respect the perimeter. Boston felt the difference firsthand. So what did Indiana do? They put Pissott on a development contract and gave the last roster spot to Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, a 5'8" guard who spent most of her career at the end of benches and doesn't fill any gap on this roster that wasn't already covered multiple times over. That's not a basketball decision. It reads like Kelly Krauskopf and Amber Cox protecting a veteran relationship while a rookie who actually solves a real problem gets pushed to the margins.
I feel like the Indiana Fever are lying about Justine Pissott's leg injury. I feel like they are hiding her because they don't want to commit to giving her a full contract to be on the 12-player roster. They want her to be on that developmental contract. And I think that they know, after that game 1 versus New York, they know that if this girl continues to log minutes in these games, somebody is going to covet her. Somebody is going to snatch her off of.
And now Pissott is reportedly injured, except the timeline on that injury is vague enough that fans started asking questions pretty fast. Then Pissott herself broke her silence and told people not to believe everything being reported. That's a pretty specific thing to say if you're just dealing with a routine injury and the organization is being straight with you. You don't say that unless the story being told about you isn't your story. The pattern here is hard to ignore. Development contract for the rookie who fills a real need, a standard contract for the veteran who doesn't, a vague injury report, and then the player publicly questioning the narrative. If Pissott ends up on waivers, she won't last 24 hours before another team claims her.
I feel like they're lying about this injury because they're hiding her. I just got to keep it real. I got to keep it real. And let's take a look at what Justine Pissott also had to say. She said, let's not always believe the media, with the puzzle face. Now, I don't know necessarily what she means by this, but she could be saying, hey, we can't believe what the Fever are putting out there in the media. I'm fine. I can play. She came out and let us know, I don't care about no developmental contract.
Set the frustration aside for a second and just look at what Indiana actually has, because Clark and Boston together are as good a 1-2 punch as anyone in the league can put out there right now. Kelsey Mitchell can get her own shot off the dribble against almost any guard in the league. Lexi Hull defends and moves without the ball, and Sophie Cunningham brings toughness and shooting off the bench. That's a real perimeter group. Raven Johnson showed up in the Nigeria game with 5 steals and 5 assists, and she looked like exactly the kind of player Clark needs next to her in transition, someone who can pressure the ball, create turnovers, and push the pace before defenses get organized. The bench isn't empty. There are real players here.
What is going on? Really? Ticket sales plummeted since she came to Indiana. The fans have spoken. They don't like the lies from the front office or the questionable figures like Stephanie. Boy, got to be more careful. I mean it. Yeah. I got to tell you.
And the Liberty preseason win proved the ceiling is legitimate because Indiana beat the perceived championship favorite by 18 points without Boston and Hull even suiting up. Kelsey Mitchell and Shatori Walker-Kimbrough tied for the team scoring lead, and Indiana turned 24 Liberty turnovers into 29 points. That's not luck. That's a team that can genuinely fly in transition when the pieces click. The problem isn't talent. Good players in the wrong structure still don't produce good basketball. And right now, Indiana's structure asks Boston to anchor the post in a paint that never clears. Asks Clark to be a transition engine in a lineup that can't give her open lanes. And asks the forwards to stretch the floor when they're not built to do it. None of those players are failing. The structure is failing them.
Some could say that Stephanie White's playing defense on her own player. God. White is not a coach. I would put that there. They run an outdated plays and it shows. They will not play Clark in the position that she was made for. Off ball again in what World Cup CC nowhere to get away from boring basketball.
One stretch four fixes most of this. When a forward shoots threes well enough that defenders can't leave her, the paint opens for Boston's postgame. Clark gets downhill lanes that aren't already packed with bodies, and the guards around them get kick-out looks they can actually convert. That's not a complicated solution. It's one player doing one specific thing that nobody on the current guaranteed contract roster can do. White's system and Clark's transition game aren't actually incompatible either. Clark cutting off ball and Clark pushing pace in transition can coexist on the same team, but only if the floor is spaced enough to make both work at the same time. Right now, it isn't, so the two approaches end up competing with each other instead of feeding each other.
I tell you, a fan base is fully alert and awake. Fully alert and awake. They are seeing what's going on. Fans are smart. They are not dumb. They deserve to feel how they want to feel. Plain and simple.
Clark winning MVP in 2026 isn't a stretch. She's got the skill, the platform, and enough supporting talent around her to make a real run at it. But MVP numbers come from efficiency, and efficiency comes from spacing, and spacing comes from a stretch four that Indiana doesn't currently have on a guaranteed contract. Krauskopf and Cox already watched the preseason tape. They already know exactly what it showed them about their own team. Pissott already told people her goal is to make a 12-player roster, and she was careful not to say that roster has to be Indiana's. That's not an accident. That's a 6'4" shooter with a 7-foot wingspan, letting every other team in the league know she's available, and teams like the Portland Fire and Washington Mystics are absolutely paying attention. Indiana's development contract only gives them a 14-day exclusivity window before any team can walk up and offer Pissott a standard deal, forcing the Fever to match it or watch her walk. Is the Indiana Fever front office really serious about winning a championship? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.